No one that night had any idea what was about to unfold. Outside, the city slept beneath a cold, relentless rain. Inside, a tired waitress wiped down the counter for what felt like the 1,000th time. It was just another ordinary shift, until it wasn't. That's when she saw him, outside alone, huddled beneath the rain. A fragile boy sat in his wheelchair, shivering, waiting for someone who might never come. She didn't hesitate. She opened the door, pulled him inside, warmed his hands, and served him food. She offered something rare, pure kindness. No questions, no expectations, just humanity. But what she didn't know was that this small act, almost instinctive, had already placed her in the sights of someone far more powerful than she could imagine. Across the street, hidden inside a luxury car parked in the shadows, a billionaire was watching. Not by accident, and he wasn't just anyone. What began as a simple gesture was, within hours, about to spark a chain of events so brutal and unexpected that it would change that waitress's life forever. And the most shocking part, she still had no idea who that little boy was or who was about to knock on her door. If this story already has your full attention, like the video, drop a comment. Small choices change everything, and subscribe to the channel right now, because what happens next, you won't be able to stop watching. The rain wasn't falling, it was crashing. Thick sheets of water hammered the cracked pavement of Lexington Avenue, blurring the edges of the streetlights and drowning out the faint hum of late-night traffic. Puddles grew into shallow rivers, carving lines through the gutters of a city too tired to care. Inside the old Lexington diner, Serena Carter moved like muscle memory. She wiped down the counter, the faded pink rag sliding over chipped formica as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The scent of burnt coffee and frying oil clung to her uniform. It was past 11 p.m., her double shift finally winding down, and most of the booths sat empty, except for one elderly couple in the corner, sipping weak tea as if stalling before heading back out into the storm. Serena rubbed the back of her neck. Her entire body ached, but the ache had long become part of her. Rent was due, groceries were low. The tips tonight barely covered bus fare. Just one more shift, always just one more. And then she saw him. A small silhouette caught her eye through the rain-smeared window. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, sitting alone outside the diner under the flickering glow of the neon sign. His thin frame trembled inside a battered wheelchair. Water streamed off his soaked hair, his frail hands gripping the edges of a threadbare blanket that offered no real warmth. Serena's breath caught. No one should be out in this, especially not a child. Without thinking, she set the rag down and pushed open the diner door. The cold wind slapped her face as she stepped into the rain. "Hey, sweetie," she called softly, crouching beside him. "Hey, what are you doing? Out here all alone?" The boy flinched at first, eyes wide, uncertain, as if unsure whether she was real. "I'm waiting for my dad," he whispered, his voice barely audible through the rain. Serena looked up and down the street. Nothing, no car, no headlights, just the buzz of a broken street lamp across the road and the occasional hiss of tires on wet asphalt. "Where is he, honey?" she asked gently. The boy shrugged, gripping the blanket tighter. Serena bit her lip. She knew this city, knew too well how people slipped through its cracks. She couldn't leave him here. Not like this. "You can't stay out here, baby," she said softly. "Not in this rain. Come inside with me, okay? We'll get you warm." The boy hesitated, glancing down the empty street one last time. Then slowly, he nodded. Serena rose, gently gripping the handles of the wheelchair, guiding him through the door. The warmth of the diner hit them like a blanket, the air thick with the smell of pancakes and melted butter. She led him to the booth, nearest the radiator, grabbed a clean towel and draped it over his shaking shoulders. Then she crouched again to meet his eyes. "My name's Serena," she smiled. "What's yours, sweetheart?" The boy sniffed and wiped his nose. "Daniel." "That's a strong name." She patted his hand. "You hungry?" He nodded shyly. Serena didn't wait for more. She was already moving. A loaf of fresh sourdough, golden grilled cheese, a bowl of hot tomato soup, steam curling into the air. It was what her grandmother used to make on nights when the world felt too cruel. Within minutes, the boy was eating like he hadn't seen food in days. His small hands wrapped around the warm bowl, his face flushing back to life. "This is the best thing I've ever had," Daniel whispered between bites, a tiny spark of wonder in his voice. Serena smiled softly, watching him as he devoured the meal. Good food couldn't fix everything, but sometimes it could make things just a little less heavy. What she didn't know was that her small act of kindness wasn't going unseen, because across the street, hidden beneath the shadows, a sleek black Bentley sat quietly. And inside that car, someone was watching, someone who would soon change everything. The rain streaked across the Bentley's windshield in thin rivers, distorting the neon glow of the diner sign into a crimson smear. The wipers moved in slow, deliberate swipes, as if matching the steady rhythm of the man inside. Raymond Holt sat alone. His hands rested on the leather steering wheel, but his eyes were locked on the scene unfolding across the street. His jaw clenched as he watched Serena gently place the steaming grilled cheese in front of his son. Daniel. The boy smiled for the first time that evening, his frail shoulders beginning to relax as Serena draped the towel around him, speaking softly, like she'd known him forever. Raymond exhaled, slow and controlled, but his stomach twisted in a way he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the rain that made him uncomfortable. It was her, the waitress, the one who had seen his son sitting alone, freezing in the rain, and didn't hesitate. The one who didn't look for cameras or approval or an audience. She simply acted, without knowing who Daniel was, without knowing who he was, and that to Raymond Holt was unsettling. He didn't believe in kindness. He believed in leverage. He tapped a number on his phone. The line connected instantly. "Yes, Mr. Holt," came his assistant Nora's voice, calm and sharp, even at this hour. "I need you at the Lexington diner." "Now." Nora hesitated, caught off guard. "Sir, the diner." "No suits, no heels. You blend in. Discreet. I want everything on her. Name, background, family, debts. Everything." "Yes, sir." Raymond hung up without another word. Across the street, inside the diner, Serena now sat across from Daniel, making him laugh softly between spoonfuls of soup. She wiped his chin gently with a napkin, unfazed by the late hour or the storm still raging outside. Raymond's expression remained unreadable, but beneath his icy exterior, calculations were forming. This wasn't about gratitude. It never was. Kindness was a currency, and she had just bought herself something without even knowing the price. In his world, everything came with a cost, and Serena Carter had just placed herself on his radar. 20 minutes later, Nora arrived. Dressed down, blending into the dim streetlights, she slipped into the passenger seat, rainwater dripping from her jacket. "She's good," Nora said without looking at him. "Late 20s, works 2 jobs, single, rents behind, no priors, no family nearby, grew up on the west side." "Ambitious?" Nora allowed herself a faint smile. "Survivor." Raymond's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't need to hear more. He had seen enough through the diner window. The way Serena carried herself, how she treated his son, not as a burden, not as a charity case, but with something far more dangerous. Dignity. He rubbed his chin. "She doesn't know who we are?" he asked, more as confirmation than a question. "Not a clue," Nora replied. For a moment the car sat in silence, but for the rhythmic hum of the rain. Raymond's voice dropped lower, colder. "Then she's not like the others." "No," Nora agreed softly. "She's not." Raymond leaned back, exhaling once through his nose. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The rain had finally stopped by the time Serena reached her apartment. Her cheap sneakers squished with every step as she climbed the narrow stairwell, the fluorescent light above flickering like it could give out at any moment. The old building creaked beneath her feet, the thin walls barely muffling the sound of a neighbor's late-night TV. Inside her small one-bedroom apartment, the heat was weak as usual, but at least it was dry. She dropped her keys onto the counter, pulled off her damp hoodie and exhaled deeply. The tips from tonight barely filled her worn envelope marked rent. The math hadn't changed. The stress hadn't changed, but Daniel's face, his smile, that had stayed with her all the way home, and yet as she stared out her rain-smeared window, something gnawed at her. That woman who'd picked him up. She hadn't seemed right. Too polished, too rehearsed. She wasn't his aunt. Serena knew when someone was lying. She'd grown up around enough people who perfected it, but what could she do? It wasn't her place. It never was. Her hand gripped the curtain for a moment longer before she let it fall. And then, a knock. Serena froze. It was nearly midnight. No one ever knocked at her door this late. Her pulse quickened as she approached, barefoot, silent. She pressed her eye against the peephole and felt her breath catch. A man stood on the other side, tall, sharp suit, immaculate. He didn't belong here, not in this building, not on this street, not in her world. "Who is it?" she called, out her voice low but steady. A pause. Raymond Holt. The name meant nothing, but the way he said it, calm, authoritative, like she should already know him, made her stomach tighten. "What do you want?" Another brief pause. "To talk." Serena's fingers hovered over the chain lock. Her instincts screamed to leave it bolted. But curiosity, that dangerous kind of curiosity that had gotten her into trouble before, won. Slowly, she cracked open the door, leaving the chain still secured. Through the narrow gap, she studied him under the dim hallway light. His eyes were sharp, cold, assessing her in return like he was reading every detail in real time. His tailored coat looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. His shoes gleamed without a single drop of rain. He didn't belong here. "I don't know you," she said flatly. "No," Raymond replied, "but you know my son." Serena's stomach turned. "Daniel." His nod was almost imperceptible. "I was across the street last night. I saw everything." Her throat went dry. "You were watching?" "I was." Her fingers clenched tighter around the doorframe. "You here to complain that I fed your son or something?" His lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but something colder. "No, I don't. Believe in charity. I believe in debts." Serena's brow furrowed. "Debts?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope. Without asking, he slid it through the narrow opening beneath the chain. It landed on her floor like it weighed 100 pounds. "What is this?" she asked. "A job offer." Serena blinked. For a moment her brain stalled. "A job offer? At Holt Dynamics?" he added, as if that explained everything. "6 figures, full benefits, starting immediately." Her laugh was sharp, incredulous. "You think you can just show up here, hand me an envelope, and buy me?" Raymond's voice didn't waver. "No, I think you earned this." She stared at him, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." His voice dropped even lower, and for the first time it almost sounded human. "I know you saw my son, not my money, not my name, just him." The silence between them thickened. Her eyes flicked down to the envelope. Thick, heavy, promising. And in that moment, every exhausted shift, every bounced rent check, every sleepless night flashed through her mind like lightning. "I'll think about it," she whispered. Raymond nodded once. "Good." And without another word, he turned and disappeared into the dim hallway. Serena stood there long after the door shut, the envelope heavy in her hands, her world already tilting beneath her feet. Because even if she didn't know it yet, Her life had just changed forever. The next morning felt like stepping into a different universe. Serena stood in front of the Holt Dynamic skyscraper, 72 stories of glass, steel, and polished perfection. The sunlight reflected off the towering windows like blades, cutting through the Baltimore skyline. Expensive cars lined the valet entrance. Men and women in tailored suits rushed past her, heads down, Bluetooths in ear, moving like they had somewhere far more important to be. Serena exhaled, clutching her small thrift store purse tight against her chest. Her department store blazer suddenly felt thinner. Her thrifted heels ached after just the short walk across the marble floor, but she lifted her chin anyway. She had been underestimated. Her whole life, she knew how to hold her ground. The receptionist barely looked at her before calling upstairs. Moments later, an elevator opened with a soft chime, and there stood Nora, the same woman who had tried to whisk Daniel away that rainy night. She wore a fitted black suit, sharp as a knife, her blonde hair tied into a severe bun. Nora offered a polite, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Miss Carter, right on time," Serena nodded, hiding the flicker of irritation under her skin. She would not give this woman the satisfaction. The ride up was silent. The higher they climbed, the more distant the world outside seemed to become. When the elevator doors opened, Serena stepped into Raymond Holt's office. It was nothing like the diner. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Modern art hung on the walls, and an enormous glass desk sat at the center like a throne. Raymond stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city as if it all belonged to him. He didn't turn right away. "You showed up," he said, calmly, his voice even. "I said I'd think about it," Serena replied. "I thought." Finally he turned, those cold grey eyes landing on her again, but this time something in them flickered. Not warmth, but approval. "Good." He gestured to the chair across from him. She sat, keeping her posture strong, refusing to shrink beneath his gaze. "Let's be clear," she started before he could speak. "I'm not here to be your charity case. You're not buying me." His lips twitched faintly, almost a smile. "That's why I chose you." She frowned slightly. "You don't even know if I can do the job." "I don't need to," Raymond said, leaning forward now. "I've seen how you deal with people. You see them, you read them, you listen. That's a skill most people at this level never learn." Serena exhaled slowly. She wasn't sure if he was complimenting her or manipulating her. Maybe both. Raymond slid a folder across the table. "You'll start as my direct liaison for external negotiations, public relations, labor disputes. You'll be sitting across the table from men who don't think you belong there." Serena arched her brow. "And you expect me to convince them I do?" "I expect you to prove to them that you don't need their permission." There was a long silence between them. Serena finally nodded once. "When do I start?" Raymond didn't hesitate. "Now." The first thing Serena learned about Holt Dynamics was that power didn't whisper here. It roared. Every floor was louder than the last, not in noise, but in presence. Confidence oozed from every corner. Men in $3,000 suits walked like they owned the air itself. Women in sharp heels clicked through the halls like ticking clocks, and no one looked like her. The stares were subtle but constant, polite smiles, quick glances, calculations. Who is she? How did she get in here? Who pulled the strings? Serena kept walking. Nora escorted her into a large glass conference room where the first real test waited, a meeting with the Orion Group. 3 men already sat at the table, older, white, with sharp eyes and colder smiles. Their perfectly tailored suits practically announced generational wealth. Raymond sat at the head of the table, calm as ever, not bothering with small talk. He gestured for Serena to sit beside him. "This," he said flatly, "is Miss Carter. She'll be joining us moving forward." The men barely acknowledged her. One of them, Philip Langford, the lead negotiator, glanced at Serena for half a second, then returned to his notes like she was background noise. She knew that look. She'd seen it her entire life. The dismissal. Langford cleared his throat and launched into numbers. Offshore labor, outsourcing, cutting costs, maximizing shareholder returns. He spoke with surgical detachment, like these were theoretical numbers, not thousands of jobs, not livelihoods, just percentages. Serena listened quietly, studying every word, every glance. Raymond didn't interrupt. He was waiting. Finally, Langford finished his pitch, leaning back with smug satisfaction. Raymond nodded slightly, then looked to Serena. "Your thoughts, Miss Carter." Every head turned toward her now. The room shifted, like waiting for the waitress to spill the tray. Serena inhaled, steadying herself. "Let me ask you something, Mr. Langford," she began, her voice calm but carrying weight. "Have you ever been inside one of the plants you're planning to shut down? Met the workers? Looked them in the eye?" Langford blinked, mildly amused. "That's not my role." Serena smiled tightly. "Of course it's not. It's never. Your role, your job is to cut, to squeeze every last dollar until there's nothing left but empty buildings and broken families." The temperature in the room shifted. The other men exchanged glances. Nora's eyes darted up, but she stayed silent. Langford tried to chuckle. "Miss Carter." She didn't let him finish. "You want to talk numbers? Fine. Let's talk." She slid a document across the table, one she'd stayed up all night preparing after digging through the company files. "This is a 5-year projection. You'll save on labor up front, yes, but 3 years into overseas production, rising. Wages, shipping delays, and international tariffs will wipe out your margins. Not to mention the PR disaster when American headlines read thousands laid off for overseas profits." Langford's face tightened as he skimmed the data. Raymond watched silently, his hands folded, eyes sharp. "This isn't just about numbers," Serena finished. "It's about consequences, and I promise you the long-term cost will crush your shareholders." For a moment, no one spoke. Langford shifted uncomfortably. His confidence cracked just slightly. Finally, he placed the file down. "We'll revisit the proposal." Raymond nodded, satisfied. "See that you do." The meeting ended without another word. As the executives filed out, Serena exhaled for the first time, her pulse still pounding. Raymond finally spoke, his voice cool but firm. "That's why you're here." Serena glanced at him, her breathing steadying. Damn right I am. 2 months in, Serena had found her rhythm. She'd learned the game, how to sit at the table, how to hold her ground while men twice her age tried to talk over her, how to make them listen without ever raising her voice. Her wins weren't loud, but they echoed. Even Raymond seemed different. He didn't smile often, or ever, but there was a respect now. A quiet acknowledgement. She wasn't just a hire. She was becoming a player, but the higher you climb, the sharper the knives. It started with a simple email. Nora met her in the hallway, her face unusually tight. "We have a problem," she whispered. Serena frowned. "Define problem." Nora handed her a printed document. It was a leaked internal report, highly classified financial data that had been sent directly to the press. And at the top of the forwarded email chain was Serena's name. Her stomach dropped. "What the hell is this?" Serena demanded, her voice low but shaking. Nora's voice was sharp, fast. "Someone's framing you." Serena stared at the page, the air thickening around her. She'd seen this before, not this exact play, but the pattern, the moment where they decided you'd risen far enough, the moment when you stopped being valuable and started being expendable. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Who else knows?" Nora hesitated. "The board. Raymond." Serena's chest tightened. "The board?" she whispered. She was barely in the door, and now they were preparing to toss her out. The black woman with too much confidence and too many opinions. She was never supposed to last this long. By the time she reached Raymond's office, he was already waiting, the folder open on his desk. His expression was unreadable, not cold, but not warm either. "Tell me I'm not wrong," he said quietly. Serena slammed the email on the table. "I didn't do this." Raymond didn't blink. He hadn't expected her to. "I want to believe that," he said, "but you understand how this looks." Serena's throat tightened. "Do you think I did this?" There was a pause. Long, enough to crush her. "No," he finally said, "I don't." The breath she'd been holding finally escaped. "But the board does," Raymond continued, his voice dropping, "and they're looking for someone to bleed." Serena's mind raced. "So what now?" she asked, steadying her voice. Raymond exhaled slowly, his tone hardening. "Now, we find who set you up." Serena froze. "We?" she repeated. Raymond's jaw tightened. "We." For the first time she saw it. Not just a boss protecting his investment, but something more dangerous, an ally who understood exactly how this game was played, and whoever had planted this trap for her, they had no idea what kind of fight they had just started. They worked through the night. Serena and Nora sat side by side, hunched over the monitors in a private conference room, digging through server logs, security access files, email routing chains, looking for the fingerprints of whoever had set her up. It was surgical. Whoever had done this knew how to cover their tracks, but not perfectly. "There," Nora whispered, pointing to the screen. "See that? A single login, a temporary sub-account routed through an external server, disguised under layers of corporate proxies." Serena's eyes narrowed. "Whose credentials?" Nora traced it carefully. Line by line. The name appeared slowly on the screen. Eric Calloway, senior executive, 10 years at Holt. Dynamics, untouchable. One of the inner circle who had quietly watched her rise and waited for his opportunity to push her off the ladder. Serena clenched her jaw. Of course, he was exactly the type. Too polished to get his hands dirty. Always. Hiding behind smiles in the boardroom, but pulling strings from the shadows. Nora sat back. "We have enough to bury him," Serena exhaled. "Raymond needs to see this." By morning, the boardroom felt like walking into a firing squad. The full board sat around the long, polished table, powerful men and women in tailored suits, their expressions already written before she even stepped inside. At the head of the table, Raymond sat, perfectly still, perfectly unreadable. The chairman spoke first. "Miss Carter," he began smoothly, "we've reviewed the evidence of the breach. Given your short tenure and the severity of this violation." Serena didn't let him finish. She slammed the thick folder onto the table. "Before you finish that speech," she said, her voice steady but sharp, "you might want to review this." The room froze. Dozens of powerful eyes shifted as the board members began flipping through the file. Call logs, bank transfers, server access logs, timestamps, everything, all pointing directly to Eric Calloway. 2 seats down, Calloway's face paled. His fingers twitched as he tried to control his breathing, but his fall was already happening. "This is a setup," he snapped, his voice cracking. "She forged this." "Enough," Raymond said, his voice slicing through the tension like a blade. He stood, his voice cold and final. "Effective immediately, Eric Calloway is terminated. Legal will handle the rest." He turned his gaze to the rest of the board. "And let this serve as a warning to anyone else who thinks they're untouchable." The room fell dead silent. Serena didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She stood tall, steady, and let the weight of her survival fill the room. When the meeting ended, Raymond approached her quietly, his voice lower than usual. "You handled yourself." Serena's voice was calm. "I didn't come here to survive. Raymond. He studied her for a moment. I know. And for the first time since she'd stepped into Holt Dynamics, she wasn't standing in his world anymore. She was building her own. 2 weeks later, Serena stood beneath the open sky. The sun beamed brightly, casting warm light over the small graduation stage set up in the park. Folding chairs filled the lawn, buzzing with proud parents and family members. Balloons swayed gently in the breeze, and there, front and center, was Daniel, wearing his cap and gown, grinning like his whole world was brand new. Serena stood beside Raymond near the front row. She couldn't take her eyes off Daniel's face. His chair had been decorated with streamers, and he held his diploma tightly in his small hands, like it was a treasure. "I told you I'd make it," Daniel beamed, his chest puffed out with pride. Serena laughed, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "Never doubted you for a second." Raymond, standing beside her, watched them both, that same unreadable calm he always wore, but his voice, for once, softened. "You did good, Carter," Serena smirked, never looking away from Daniel. "Damn right I did." Daniel turned toward them both with playful suspicion. "Are you two gonna hug or something?" Raymond sighed. "Absolutely not," Serena laughed. "God, no!" And for the first time in years, Serena Carter didn't feel like she was simply surviving. She was building something. Months passed. Serena's name now gleamed in gold letters across her new office door. Vice President, Corporate Strategy. Holt Dynamics. The skyline looked different from up here, not because the city had changed, but because she had. Her leadership didn't just save the company's reputation, it redefined it. Under Serena, Holt Dynamics launched new initiatives. Ethical labor programs, diversity mentorships, partnerships with minority-owned businesses, and for the first time, real opportunities for people like her, people who were never supposed to get this far. But her proudest work, the Carter Holt Foundation, built in honor of those who rarely get seen until it's too late. The foundation's new community center glistened under the morning sun, packed with young students, workshops, and opportunities that didn't exist before. At its ribbon cutting, Daniel stood beside her, now a college freshman, taller than she remembered, but with that same bright spark in his eyes. "You ready for your first year?" Serena smiled. Daniel grinned wide. "I've got this." She squeezed his shoulder gently, her voice warm but firm. "Just remember, one small act can change everything." Daniel nodded, fully understanding now what she meant. Because once, years ago, a tired waitress opened a door during a rainy night for a boy in a wheelchair, and unknowingly changed both of their worlds forever.